Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda Stansel, a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. All right. Well, welcome to the Shut Up and Sit podcast. I'm Yedda, and this is our second episode. Today, we're here to talk to one of the most important human beings in my life, my mom. And in case you guys didn't know, listeners, that the number one best way to achieve success on a podcast, I read somewhere the research said that you need to have your very first guest be your mom. So I thought, well, I can do that. And I'm excited to have you here today, Mom, with us. And it's going to be, I have no idea where this show is going to go because it's power-packed with a lot of thoughts that I'm already thinking and a lot of things that I want to make sure we share and that we have our listeners engage in. But, this whole shut up and sit journey and movement, you guys, would not have been possible, obviously, without my mom for many reasons. But it goes even beyond just the mother and daughter relationship that we have. It really goes into a level of healing. And Mom, you're healing your own personal growth work and journey into this shut up and sit content really was what allowed our entire family to break free from, generations of bondage, of addiction and abuse, and a lot of unhealthy patterns and habits. And if you hadn't done the work, if you hadn't woken up and started this journey, which has been, 30 years, I guess now for you, our entire family wouldn't be where we are today. And I think that's what's really important for the folks listening is, this isn't a show. This isn't a business idea that we concocted that we thought, oh, let's get, rich and famous and let's go out there and start telling the world what they need to do to fix themselves. This has been a journey that we've been living our whole lives, and we are sharing that now with the world for the hopes, I know I am and I know you are, to empower people to know if we could do it, they could do it. And we've got a lot of great stories about you and I and your, when you first married my dad in the book, which are great, and we can revisit some of those today. But I think it's really important to just maybe have some of the folks listening just hear your story about, what life was like for you. And you can feel free to start wherever you want, but who you are, your human story is really important in this journey. Just simply, if I would say to you guys listening, even if all you get is the contrast, when you hear Mom's story, when you hear our story together, what I hope you leave with by the end of this show is the understanding that if we made it, anybody could make it. So, Mom, I feel like this is like one of our nightly phone calls. We do talk on the phone every day, and we talk about this stuff every single day. But no, really, Mom, you've said a lot in the videos on my website that I'm your hero, and I would say, no, you're my hero. We argue about this. But honestly, tell us a little bit about your journey, where you were and how you got to where you are today.
Well, as far back as I can remember, I was just an out of control kid. In school, I never fit in. I was never tested, but I certainly believe I had a learning disability because I couldn't get it.
She does.
I just couldn't get it. And I'd see the other kids and I would be like, what is wrong with me? I didn't feel like I was born into, there were 6 kids in the family and I was in the middle. And I didn't feel like I fit in the family. I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. And I was always getting in trouble. I wasn't a good student. And so when I was 14 years old, I found the solution to everything. And that was drinking. It just took the edge off. And so I just started drinking to get drunk. And it just felt so good that then that became the community that accepted me. All of the bad kids at school that did drugs, and they would go in the parking lot and get drunk. And so I would just go to school, walk in one door, walk out the other, meet everybody in the parking lot, and we'd all pool our lunch money and we'd go get drunk. And so that was a temporary solution. And then when I was 16, I met your dad, and course, that's how I met him in that world. And he was further down the road than me. And we started seeing each other. And then I realized that I had a new purpose in life, and that was he needed me to save him. So I stopped drinking, and that was my full-time job. Well, then, of course, I got pregnant right away, and that changed everything. And ultimately, when I was 7 months pregnant, we got married, but we didn't have a clue what that was all about, so that didn't last. So here I am, divorced, single mom. You were 2 years old at the time, living in government-subsidized apartments, just surviving, literally just surviving. And that was a really hard life, and I wanted better, and I was able to get a job, and I didn't even have a car, and I would have to sometimes just hitchhike to go to work. But anyway, I did, and I started earning money, and we started having a better life. And then when you were about 3 years old, I got married again and met a wonderful man, but I still hadn't done my work.
And so I don't even like calling Dad stepdad because
he's not.
and so, for our listeners, you'll hear this in the book, but, my biological father, who I've called Chris my whole life. And so in the dedication, I've even had people say, wait a minute, you got your father, you've got your dad, and you've got Pop. So Chris being my biological father, but for the sake of the show, when I say dad and when you say dad,
yes,
when you got married to Dad, I was 5 years old and he adopted me. And thank goodness he did, because he was really the only father figure that ever kind of stepped in the picture for us. And I'm curious, Mom, before you go on into that next phase, just talking about that despair and the dysfunction when you were married to Chris. There's a story and we've put it in the book, which, by the way, you guys, I didn't write this book and then say, surprise, Mom, I wrote a book. I wrote the book, and my mom was the first person to read it, to make sure that what I was saying and what we were putting out there into the world was something that would make a difference and be honest, but also empowering, and not really into that place of collusion around the victimization aspects of all the story. But the one thing I want you to talk about in a little bit more detail, if you don't mind, before you go on, is, we talk about the story in the book about you walking across the parking lot with me with no shoes.
Yes.
And so I think it's important for people to understand. So, you hitchhiked. Yes, things were hard, but things were really hard.
Yes.
Yeah. And so will you share that story?
Yes. We were living in government subsidized apartments. We were living on food stamps, welfare. We didn't have anything. We were just surviving. And I didn't have any shoes. You didn't have any shoes. And at the time, I can't really recall exactly how old you were, but I had to carry you. It was too far for you to walk. And so I was going to take you, when the welfare check came, I was going to take you to get a new pair of shoes. And so I had to walk across from the apartments. There was a bowling alley and there was a large parking lot. So I had to walk across the parking lot to get to the shopping center on the other side of the bowling alley. And it was a really hot day. Obviously, I didn't think this one through. And halfway across, I'm carrying you, and my feet start to burn so bad, I got stuck in the middle of the parking lot. And I was just standing there. My feet were burning. You were crying. It was hot. And I said, oh, my God, what am I going to do? And then I said, oh, wait a minute. I said, I have 2 envelopes in my purse, one for food stamps, one for welfare. And I got the 2 envelopes out, and I put them on the pavement, and I stood on the envelopes. And I'm standing there, and I thought, wow, look at me. This is the story of my life. This is, I'm stranded out here. I'm barely surviving, and all I have is welfare and food stamps. And so, fortunately, a big dump truck comes along with 3 guys in it. They were out working, and they said, "Hey, it looks like you're stuck. Can we give you a ride?" And I said, "Yes, that would be great." So they actually gave me a ride over to the shopping center, and I went and I bought us both shoes. And I was just like, wow, I couldn't believe we both had brand new shoes.
Well, and so here's what I love about this story, because for years, you guys, I have had a fetish with shoes. Like, I'm talking straight up addiction with shoes. My favorite shoes, as my mom knows, are red shoes.
Yes.
Okay. And why are they red shoes? Because I got red shoes when I was a kid. Remember my little red tennis shoes and my little red sandals? Yes. And it's so interesting how our life's experiences begin to shape who we are. I mean, we know that science knows this, not just in utero. I mean, we're talking generational things get passed on. And so it wasn't until I did this work to wake up and figure out who I am and what do I want and how to really integrate and heal myself, which I'm not even sure that we would say we even use the word heal in our family, but just that waking up, coming back to the wholeness and the essence of who we really are. But I never knew why I loved shoes. I mean, when I was married, you remember, we would fight about it. I mean, yes. I had a lot of shoes. I just loved buying shoes. I still love to buy shoes. The difference now is, though, I'm absolutely convinced that that moment was an amygdala, literally, response in my little baby brain as we were standing there. I might not have the words to tell you all today. I remember that moment exactly, but my body remembers that moment. My psyche remembers that moment. Every part of my being remembers you cannot be without shoes. Mm-hmm. You cannot be without shoes. And so what's interesting is how those tracks get laid in our biology and our neurobiology and in our whole being. And we carry that out into our grown-up world. We don't even know about it. Mm-hmm. And so you were in a place where you were also carrying generational chains, like you said, of your childhood and what you were coming out of and what you had experienced. And then there you are, standing there on those 2 checks, literally standing on the foundation of the infrastructures that keep a lot of people stuck as victims. It helps, but you in that moment made a choice to do what?
Yeah. To do something different, to better my life. I said, I am stuck in the system and I do not want to be here. And I felt like such a victim. And I just made a decision. I said, I can do better. And I got a job. And I got a job in a factory and started earning more money, and life started to get better. And that's when I met your dad. And we got married. And of course, I thought that was the solution to everything. And I had never done my work and had no idea, had never been around a healthy marriage, was never exposed to a healthy marriage, even a healthy relationship. And so we got married, and 8 years later, and 4 children, and
which, by the way, you guys, I am firstborn, most loved. And I need you guys to hear that. It is the deal in my family. Everyone knows it. I am the oldest. And yes, there are 4 siblings. There are 3 siblings plus me with 4 kids. And we're all 5 years apart. Although my sister Jasmine would say 9 years. Easy math is roughly we're about 5 years apart. And so we had a lot of great, wonderful experiences having Dad come in and provide and take care of us. But yes. You said a really important thing here. You hadn't done your work. And I don't know that I never really thought about doing my work until you started doing the work. And I started to wake up from the trance of all the illusion of all these belief systems and all the mm-hmm. things that were inside of me that were holding me back that I didn't even know existed. Mm-hmm. And this was the part that this is why this show is here, why we want to have more of this content out in the world, is to wake people up.
Yes.
The waking up is the most important part, because when you wake up, and I've got news for you guys, you wake up in the suffering. The joy is great. It's wonderful. But, when people look at their lives and why am I suffering? The suffering can be used as a wake up. And so one of my favorite quotes, and we talk about this a lot, but, suffering without catharsis is wasted pain. Mm-hmm. And that's a big mouthful, but what does that mean? When you're suffering, pain is going to happen in life, but suffering is optional. And so as you were standing there on those checks, holding a baby on your hip, thinking, is this all there is to life? And I know I've been in that place, not literally, but in that same narrative, as much of the world has at one point wondered, is there more? And the answer is yes. The suffering is the wake-up call to say, go a different direction. Do something different. So you did do something different. And in that, it showed you to do the next thing different. So as you're with dad and you've got 4 kids, I know, because I lived in that house. It was crazy times. I mean, there were 4 of us. Like you said, you didn't do your work. So you're raising 4 kids. What was that like to be in your second marriage with 4 kids, having not done the work?
Oh, it was hell, because in my mind, all I was ever exposed to was, just alcohol, a family history of alcohol. And so you either would drink or you didn't drink. So I thought, well, gosh, I'm not drinking, so I must be okay. But why am I not okay? Because I was so depressed, so overwhelmed. I didn't have any life skills. I was just, but I thought, but gosh, drinking was the problem. So what's wrong with me? And I just thought, I'll just push through. I can do this. But the suffering got worse. The depression got worse. And till the point I said, the easy solution to this is I'll just start drinking again. And it just took the edge off. And I was like, wow. A little break. And then I just picked it up right where I left off. And then I was into it. I was drinking every day. And my life was getting worse, more out of control. The depression and the anxiety was just unbearable. And I was just locked up in a hell. It was a slow death, and it just took me to such a dark place that I didn't contemplate suicide, but I had daily thoughts of, it would just be so nice to just close my eyes and slip away, because I can't do this anymore. I don't know how to do this, and the anxiety and the depression was debilitating. So
where was the turning point?
The turning point for me, Yedda, was you at that time had been in treatment. Mm-hmm. And
Shocker.
I could see that you had a problem. That was clear. You had a problem. Well, I couldn't have a problem because I'm your mother. I'm not supposed to have a problem. So I held it all in. And I remember when you were in treatment, and in order to have visitation, I had to come to an AA meeting that you were required to go to. And I'd never been to an AA meeting, and because I didn't need an AA meeting. And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden you stand up and you say, "Hi, my name is Yedda, and I'm a recovering alcoholic." And I was like, wow, I can't even believe she just said that. And
I think I had to.
Well,
just kidding.
Afterwards, because we could have visitation afterwards. And afterwards, I was like, how could you stand up and say that about yourself? I knew you had a problem, but to say you're a recovering alcoholic, that was like, wow. And I would never do that. Be careful what you say.
Yeah.
Because it was, I had, of course, the kids had visitation with your dad every other weekend, and it was a weekend that they were all with your dad. And so I had been drinking with friends all weekend, and I came home, and when I walked into the house and I was alone, the anxiety and depression was so great that I just could not be in the house anymore. And I walked right through the house out onto the back deck. And I just made a decision right then and there that I didn't want to live anymore. And I just sat there. I mean, I wasn't religious. It wasn't about that at all. But I did believe in God. I did believe in a power greater than me. And I believed that if God wanted to, he could take my life. And so in that moment, I had no idea what I was doing. But I just said out loud, God, I don't want to live this way anymore. And I don't know how to do this. And so I'm ready. If you want to take my life, I'm ready. And I really believed that God was going to take my life because I had no purpose. I was so worthless. There was no reason for me to even be alive. And I said, but God, if it's your will for me to stay, I don't know how to do this. And if you lead, I'll follow. And I remember it so clearly. I just closed my eyes and I just sat there. And I think I thought if God was going to take my life, it would be like thunder and lightning and rumbling. And I'd have some kind of warning or something. And I was just like, okay, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I don't know. And
thankfully it didn't.
And it was just the opposite. It was just the opposite. In that silence, the greatest peace just came upon me that I had ever experienced in my life. I had never experienced anything like it. And I knew for the first time in my life that if God could take my life and he didn't, I was supposed to be here. And there was a purpose and a plan for my life. And I didn't have to know what it was. I just had to show up and surrender.
Yeah, that's the word I kept thinking of is
surrender.
That's what total surrender was for you.
It was for me, it was like I had been on this journey leading to a cliff. I didn't know it, but then I arrived at the cliff and I'm standing there and it was like everything, I was pushed so close to the edge of the cliff. It was like I could just feel my toes clinging on the edge of the cliff. And it was just this darkness all around. And I thought, I just want to free fall. And whatever happens, happens. I just can't stand here on this cliff any longer. And I just surrendered. And it was just free falling. And it was in that complete surrender. I just felt God. It was like, in the circus, the trapeze.
Yes, it's so funny you pick the circus for your analogy, for your metaphor.
Yeah, because my life pretty much was circus. And so it was like, when they jump, they're free falling. Yeah. But then what is the guy, the catcher? Is that what he's called?
The other trapeze people that swing across and catch you?
Yeah, and it was just perfect timing. And it was like just when I thought, the bottom, it's going to hit any minute. It was like I felt God grab me.
Yeah. And so you've been sober ever since.
Yes. So what happened was when I had that incident on my deck, then for the first time in my life, it was not an audible voice, but I had this absolute knowingness of the next step, the next thing I was supposed to do. And that was to go, it was in great detail. And it was like I got this chunk of information without words.
So would you call that silence? In the silence, in that stillness, in that moment of complete surrender?
Yes.
Where you went within, yes. You found everything that you needed.
Yes. And so, so I got up and the knowingness that I received was go make a phone call somebody to take you to an AA meeting. The thing I said I would never do. And so the only person I knew was a friend of yours who was your age, and he knew me. I was your mom.
Was that Tim?
Tim.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was just complete surrender of everything. And I said, hey, Tim, I'm calling because I need your help. I need a ride.
It took a lot of courage.
Oh, honey.
To call, you guys really seriously, to call one of your kids' friends to take you to an AA meeting, that's crazy courage. and knowing that silence that spoke to you, that stillness, that wisdom
Yes.
that we're talking about in Shut Up and Sit, that we're now helping others to tap into and listen to. That knowingness is what was guiding you. And you guys, when you tap into that knowingness, it overrides all logic.
Yes.
It overrides all fear.
Yes.
It overrides any doubt, any question, insecurity. It moves in you at a level that you don't even have a desire to want to question it. And so to the outsider listening, they might go, that's just really crazy. You mean you called your kid's friend to go to an AA meeting? Yeah. Because that's what you knew you were supposed to do. That's wisdom. That's where that magic happens. That's why we talk about silence being life-changing magic. You shut up and sat down long enough that you were able to listen and you heard something different instead of the inner narrative and the mental chatter. And so that was 30 years ago. You picked up your 30-year chip. Was it last year or the year before?
That was, last year.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been over 30 years that you have been sober, and that was just the first domino of being sober, because then for you, the sober, the sane, the silence, it all just started to kind of click in. And because you did that work, and I think it's really interesting, and I'm a huge supporter of people, being sober and AA and a lot of the programs that are out there, but you didn't stop there. That's the important part. It was one part of the journey.
Yes.
And then the other layers and the other pieces came. And so I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about those next pieces, because you got to wake up first. And that was what you did. Your sobriety was your wake up moment.
Yes.
And then once you wake up, you start realizing there's a little bit of cleanup to do. So talk about that process of where you went and how that evolved. And then how that kind of intersects with the work that we're doing now.
Well, when I started going after that incident, I knew deep inside me that I was not alone. And I had felt alone my entire life. I just felt like an empty shell. And after that incident, I knew I wasn't alone and God was with me, and I had surrendered to his guidance, whatever that was. So when you said, God, that took a lot of courage for you to call, one of your friends to come get me. That never entered the equation. I just showed up and listened and followed through.
Yep.
And what I realized was when I went to AA and I totally surrendered to a better way, my mind was open. I started learning things. I started acquiring life skills. And I was on such an exciting journey because, gosh, I was sober, and little by little, I was feeling better. The depression was lifting. The anxiety was lifting. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was doing life. I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And then because I told you I had trouble in school and I couldn't read, and now my mind is open, and it was like a sponge. I just wanted to read everything I could get my hands on. And the more I would read, it was like an exciting journey. It was like an experiment. It was like I would learn something. It was like, I can't wait to try this.
And I love hearing that because, again, the listeners here don't realize that, at ninth grade, you were done with education.
Yes. I quit school when I was 15.
Yeah. So that's where the learning stopped for you.
Yes.
And so to be able to go back and start learning again and realize not only did you want to learn, but you were good at learning, and that the learning was actually helping you. It was, and I remember that because I remember watching all of that. And, as you went through that learning process, again, can you guys imagine, you're watching these polarities of, the story of your mom and the suffering and the shame and the addiction, and then to watch the healing and then see the pieces that started to come from that really was such a great introduction and inspiration for me to say, now it was like the roles had reversed, and I thought, holy cow. It's like there were times I didn't even know who you were, because I was like, this isn't my mom. I don't know who this person is. This is not the woman I grew up with. Not that it was bad, because I do love you, Mom. But there were some crazy moments.
Yes.
And so to see this other life that was unfolding and evolving, and unfortunately, and you guys will hear in the book, you and Dad didn't stay married, which would make sense because you had to do your work and you had to go separate ways to find out how to heal and do your own work, but it wasn't going to be together anymore.
Yes.
And so then as you started learning and you were sober and you started to grow and evolve, that's where Pop comes into the picture.
Yes.
And this is no joke, you guys, and you'll hear in a second about Pop, but this is a way of life for us now. We sit around the dinner table, we talk about the books we're reading. Bob, was hugely instrumental in the healing of our family, to come in and just create a crucible, if you will, of a sacred, safe space for us as a family, and for you to learn about life coaching skills, to grow, to evolve into really whole, healthy human beings that we had never experienced as a family. And so that life that you and Bob live now, and where you're at with your sobriety, go a little bit into what really happens now for you on a day-to-day basis, and how you live your life with Bob, with our family. But this whole idea of this silence and the stillness and knowingness for you, how that plays out in this journey, because it's really critical to why I wrote the book. Tell a little bit about what that life is like now with you guys.
Well, when Bob and I met, we met at church, and we were both on a spiritual journey, and we were both divorced. So we were friends first. And what we realized was we really enjoyed talking with each other, because we were interested in the same things. And that was about self-development and learning new things and growing. And we became friends first, and then we fell in love. We got married, and when we got married, the journey continued. And so we've been married 25 years now, and every single day we wake up and we do meditation together, and we read together, we study together, we talk about everything we're learning and how it's showing up in our life, and then we have a vision for our life, and we have a very a simple life, but a very full life. And this is what's really interesting, just thinking about your life. And for me, on the first episode of the podcast, Mom, you've listened to it. And the first person I called to listen to the show was like, I got to call my mom, and I got to what do you think? Is this, do we need to change anything, tweak anything? Not to seek your approval, but because I knew that you knew this work. And I knew that what we wanted to put out for our listeners was not, let's rehash all the crappy, shitty old stories. I just cussed in front of my mom, you guys. She heard it on the other episode. I just realized that. I don't normally cuss in front of her. Oh my God, now this is going a whole different direction. But really, we don't keep the stories alive is the part that, not getting back into hashing out all the old ugliness. But, just because I wanted you to hear and know, because 8 years ago when I hit my bottom, I showed up and I worked with you and Bob. Yes.
And you guys, I walked in the door, and it was not pretty. It was a bad scene. And I knew where I was and where I needed to be were not near even remotely close in trajectory. And so we sat down, me, you, and Bob. We call him Pop in our family. And I said, I can't live like this anymore. And even though I had the courage at 16 to say that, I was a recovering alcoholic, I went on a different path. And again, it's all in the book. I got married and left home and had a kid and thought I was in a great place. And again, didn't do the work. Wasn't nearly as bad and traumatic, but as the story, because I think each generation that does this work offers a step up for the next generation that decides to do it. And so I was in a place, though, where nothing was working. A lot of the patterns and behaviors that I had grown up in and that I had experienced were playing out. You guys can hear that first episode. I tell a little bit more. And of course, in the book, the stories in detail. I had to do the work to figure out who I was and how I wanted to show up in the world. And so when I showed up with you and Bob, and you're now certified as a life coach, over 30 years sobriety, and you're living this life. And I've watched you and Bob live it. Bob's a very successful consultant, really into leadership development, helping executives, all over North America build successful businesses, but because they build successful visions for their life. Which Bob's going to be on our next episode. So hang tight if you're like, oh, I want to meet this guy, Bob. He'll be on the next episode. And because what you and Bob helped me do was to create that vision for my life.
Absolutely.
And had some really hard, honest conversations. I was going to therapy. I was doing coaching. I had met my meditation teacher, and I had all these parts and pieces kind of all scattered around. But the most important part that you and Bob offered me was, you saw who I was, but you knew who I could become. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know who that person was. I knew that there was more, but I couldn't see far enough down the road to figure out or even comprehend. But you and Bob held space.
Yes.
You held space for the vision of who was really inside of me that I had never really met before. And so, that's hard enough to do in the professional industry of hiring someone to help you, a coach, a consultant, whatever. But, to have your own parents be able to do that. I look back now and it's such a miracle when you think about a lot of the people that are suffering who, if you don't have parents who support you, you're probably thinking this is impossible. It's so hard. I'm never going to be able to do the work. It really was why I wanted to go further out and step greater out into the world to say, then let me help you hold space. Let me help build a crucible for those people that are suffering. I was really fortunate to have you and Bob. And now to be able to say 8 years further down the road, going on, I can't wait till we get to the end of the decade of this. But it's actually over 8 years now, but to be able to be where I'm at in my journey was absolutely not possible if you and Bob hadn't first done your own work. And you guys will hear Bob's story too. But if you didn't hold space for me and believe and see that I could do it. So I would come over every Sunday. I had homework. You guys gave me homework. You forced me to create a very, very clear, what you and Bob call love-based vision in figuring out who I was, where did I want to be, and then how was I going to get there? And you guys, I call this for my clients, I call it a strategic plan for their psyche. I mean, this was no joke. I mean, I came back with a 4 or 5 page document typed in great detail.
Yes.
And said, I'm going to do the work. And the next place for me, not only do I now know looking back that in generations of healing, you help the next generation step up. What happens is then the next generation sees it and does something different with it and then passes that on to the next generation. And what I love about this work more than anything is that my son, I mean, he's not here, but I get so emotional. I mean, at 23, to see where Brian Keith is because you did the work, I did the work, and he took another step up. And not only did he take a step, he leaped up and is now living a life. I mean, a kid that's 23 who was raised with meditation and not just a mom who was getting her life together, but grandparents who would edify and lift him up and talk to him. And I mean, we shattered the glass ceiling on dysfunction in our family.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's no joke. And so we don't have time in the episode. You're going to hear every single episode. You're going to hear what we did, how we did it, and how that all played out. Obviously we do have time. We could sit here and talk till midnight because I know how it works for us. But that piece of it is possible. And one of the things that's in the personal development, personal growth industry, and we talk about this a lot at home, that's missing is the ability for people to go within. I've picked up the term from when we were a kid, shut up and sit. I said this in the first episode. Do you remember when Dad would tell me to shut up and he would take the chair in the kitchen and put it in the corner? Do you remember that? And I would have to sit there in silence. Oh my God, I hated it. And I would stare at that corner in that kitchen and I would fantasize all the ways that I was going to get the hell out of here and I was going to escape and I was never coming back because you don't treat people like this. And what I realize now in looking back as a certified narrative coach is, it's a story. It's the story I experienced and that everybody's doing the best they can at the level of awareness that they're at. And so no matter where we are on this journey, if we start doing the work, it's never too late. If we start doing the work, we can step up, which then allows the next generation to step up. And it has a growth factor. It begins to expand and grow in ways that, I mean, you have 2 grandsons now and you look at them. Can you imagine where you were at their age, where they are now? It's crazy. So anyway, there's a lot we could begin to kind of expand on, and I want to keep talking to you guys. So we're gonna spend just a couple more minutes with my mom, but I just really felt like it was important to honor. We're not a normal family. A lot of people know that, and that's okay. But this work, it's real for us. I mean, we've seen it. You've seen it. Bob's seen it. As we begin to wrap up the show, Mom, I'm curious because you're the one I always call when I need advice. You're the one I always call when I need to know what to do. For the folks that are out there listening today who might be at some point in their life stuck or suffering, what would you say to them?
It's never too late to begin again. Never. You can start over anytime you want to. That was one of the great things I learned when I went to AA was you can start your day over anytime you want to. Yeah. Right here in this moment, you can start over. Yeah. Take a deep breath and begin again. Let it go. Start over.
And isn't that mindfulness?
It's absolutely mindfulness.
It's coming back to the power of the present moment, which we aren't taught. It's not a social norm here, at least in the United States. And I want to be careful about making any absolute statements because maybe you guys were taught. I wasn't taught. You weren't taught. We've talked about this before, but silence was a form of punishment in our house, and it is for most people's houses. If it wasn't, that's amazing that you were able to grow up without being used or having silence being used as a way to shut you up and make you play small and tell you just to disappear. There are a lot of people I've met in life who, just like you, Mom, said, I didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't feel like I mattered. Nobody cared about me. If they do, I've got to earn it. It's all about doing. It's not about being. And so, the highlight of our story and our relationship together, you and I went out to Deepak Chopra's place in California. And I told the story on the first episode. But, we went out there and got an experience to dive deeper into mindfulness. And, mindfulness is a practice that you, I, Bob, the rest of the family, we practice on a regular basis. Where would you be today if you didn't know how to come back to the present moment and how to get there with silence and stillness?
I would probably be okay. Just okay.
And where would you say you live today?
Oh my goodness. When I went from being a victim from being powerless to becoming empowered and realizing I was a great creator and I could create the life of my dreams. That's how powerful I was. Then I took off like a rocket and I went from living a life of being lost, living in lack, being depressed. Just totally miserable, to living I wake up every single day and the first thing I say is, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I get to live this most fantastic, exciting life of freedom and abundance and joy. And I get to share it with others and their life is better as a result of it. I'm just living a place of absolute gratitude that I got a chance to experience the other side of alcoholism, drug addiction, depression, anxiety, lack,
Well, and the great thing about this, guys, is Mom, as you were talking, I was thinking if I was listening, I'd be like, so what did you do? How did you do it? And here's what I want to say. When you and Bob helped me figure out how to do what you guys were doing, and then I took what I was learning and I just added and integrated the narrative coaching, the integrative development to it. I remember coming back to you and Bob and I said, I want to write a book. Actually, what I said was, I want to write a cutting edge personal growth and development book, workbook, whatever it's going to be called. I want to put that together and I want to go out there and I want to share this with the world. And I did. We did. What's in the book is a combination of your story, your work, Bob's work, my work, some of the greatest saints and sages in the world. And it works. And what it is, and what's different about this is it's a process that is personalized to you. And when you start this work, what's missing in this industry is a lot of the messages are you've got to become a second-rate version of somebody else and not a first-rate version of yourself, because we've been tricked into thinking in personal development to follow the guru, to go after. That would be like me saying, we are almost dressed alike today. That would be like me saying, I got to be just like my mom in order to find out who I am, because if I do what mom does, then I'll get what mom got. And that's not true. And so what I realized and what you and Bob helped me realize was we put together a framework and a guide that says, here are the steps to figure out who you are, create a love-based vision for your life, and then take the next steps to learn about thinking, feeling, behaving, habits, mindfulness, all these things that worked and do work, integrate them together in a way that works for you. And so as we built all of this and I put this book together and I brought him, it's so wild, Mom. Can you believe we're sitting here and we're having this conversation? And not only did I make the workbook, which you guys know. And so for those of you guys listening, there's a great workbook. And I made the workbook out of this journey of ours. I also made a 6x9 book. You guys can check out shutupandsit.com. We have a really cool assessment tool there where you can find out where do you start on this journey. The content is going to be the same. It's just how much content do you absorb at what rate and at what speed and in what environment. But it really is a personalized growth journey guide, basically, based upon all of our experiences. And to be able to do that together is just kind of mind-boggling as I look at this all coming together and where we are and where you are and where I am. I don't really have words, and that's kind of uncommon for me. But what I do have is the deepest gratitude and appreciation for the fact that you answered the call to wake up. And then you helped me to wake up. And then now we, as we're talking, are helping everyone who's listening and who knows who else to wake up. So as we wrap up the show today, if you don't know that you matter, you do simply because you exist. And if you are empowered by this story, if you wish that you had a mom like my mom, which I know a lot of people after they meet her, they do. She's available. I'm available on the show. She's going to be coming back a lot because I have a feeling that when people see this, they're going to think you're a better host than I am. And actually, you probably could step in and be me. So, if we got the right outfit on and I curled my hair or vice versa, you straightened yours, we could probably fool them if they saw us on video. But no, for real, you guys, it's just an awesome honor, Mom, to be here, to hear your story, to be reminded how important this work is. But I am super, super grateful that you're my mom. I wouldn't have picked any other mom.
Thank you for saying that, Yedda.
Yeah, so you have been my hero. And I got to tell you, man, I can't wait to see how other people can heal from your healing. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart. And now I just feel like I want to hug you, but you're too far away from the microphone. So as you guys are wrapping up and you're checking out the website, shutupandsit.com, know, again, like I said, you matter simply because you exist. There's so much cool stuff out there, some resources. Next episode, you're going to hear from Pop. Bob's going to be here, my mom's husband, and he's going to tell you how to build a love-based vision. He's going to get you into the nitty-gritty of what that is, what that isn't, how do you craft one, how do you start to live your life awake, and then very clearly defining where you're headed and what it is that you want to manifest in your life. So make sure you join us on the next episode, and until then, have a great day.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be